Hello there, and welcome back to the Disconnected. You might recognize part of the name on the screen now, which is They Live by Film. This is the third face, Mr. Adam Lundy, that we have never had on this channel. Adam, thanks for coming on here today.
Hey, Ryan. Yeah, more than happy to be here. I've often joked with Chris and Zach that you never invite me when you guys all talk, and then, I feel like the left out child that nobody wanted. But no, I'm very, very happy to be here to talk about movies with you. It's obviously what I love doing, is why I have the podcast. So when more people who outside of Chris and Zach want to hear my thoughts, I say yes, you absolutely can hear my thoughts.
We've been talking about doing this for a few months, and I approached Adam to do this because, again, Chris and Zach have spent more than enough hours on my channel. I needed to catch them all, so to say, and I was glad to do it. We discussed doing sort of like a review on two different films. We had talked about maybe two films that we had not seen, and somehow it ended up being two films Adam hadn't seen and two films I had seen, which is fine. I love both of these movies, and I was super glad to reassess them. First, I would rather talk about you before we get into this. So, I mean, They Live by Film. You were one of the main people behind this. Why did it come about?
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting story. We touched on it on the podcast. We had our 100 episode extravaganza that we called it pretty recently, and we kind of touched through the history of how it all started. But basically, it was during COVID, so probably coming up to like 3 years roughly, when sort of COVID really kind of kicked into gear that summer of 2020. I had just got access to the Criterion channel through nefarious means, VPNs, and it opened up like tons of films that I'd never got to see before, because where I am in Region B, not a lot of films, were coming out from other distributors. You couldn't really stream them anywhere. So there was loads of films that I'd wanted to see for years and years that, got to see for the first time, and I really wanted to talk about them. So I suppose technically I hijacked another Redditor's plan to have a film club. And I say hijacked because he put a post on the Criterion subreddit saying, hey, let's start a film club. And I approached him and said, hey, if you want help, I'll happily help. I can set up a Discord. It's probably the easiest place to do this kind of thing. And he was like, yeah, cool, whatever. And then he left like a week later. So I just became the de facto leader of this subreddit, or this Discord, I should say, which kind of grew over time. And I'd say it was about 6 months later. Well, I suppose I should say Zach was one of the first people in the Discord server. He was like what we call the OGs, because he was like day one people who commented on this Criterion post about people joining. So Zach was in there from day one. And about 6 months later, Chris joined, just through seeing the posts on the subreddit and stuff. And I just kind of put feelers out in the Discord and said, hey, I've been listening to a few different film podcasts. There's one called Criterion Now. I don't know if you're familiar with Aaron West. I'd really gotten into, and I was kind of jealous because these guys were having great conversations on movies, and I wanted to have conversations with movies, and none of my friends really like movies. And my wife will tell me to screw off. I tell her to, try and talk about a French New Wave movie with me. So I really just wanted to talk to people. And it was during COVID, so it's not like you could really go places to talk to people. So I put the feelers out and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. I don't really want to do it on my own, because I don't want to just talk. I want to converse with people. Does anyone want to do this? And Zach and Chris put their hands up, and about 2 weeks later, we recorded our first episode, which didn't have Zach, funnily enough. He was busy that weekend. So our first episode is just me and Chris, but Zach's obviously been there for every other episode since. And the podcast just kind of mutated since then. We originally started out just talking about the movies that we were watching in the film club. It almost just became more of like a diary. But then we started sort of changing things up, talking about films that we wanted to actually watch and talk about and get the other's opinion on. And then obviously we started doing our interview episodes, which is obviously how we eventually, touch base with you, because this is, what you do as well. So yeah, we're on episode, I want to say 103 or 104, something like that. And there's kind of something for everybody. If you like just hearing people talk about movies that they've watched, then we have all those episodes. If you're more into the boutique Blu-ray news stuff, then obviously all the interview episodes are there. So we try and cater to everybody a little bit. Our films that we watch have become less obscure over time, I suppose, as well. But yeah, if you haven't checked out our podcast before, please do. And we do have a YouTube channel as well, which, I'm sure Ryan's going to link down, because the second half of this interview is there already. So we're very new on YouTube, so don't be mean to us. But you can be mean about our podcast, because we're definitely not new at that. So if our podcast is still whack, please tell us some way.
Well, I've been championing They Live by Film for too long, because I love all you guys. The amount of playful badgering around film is exactly the perfect level. The amount of terrible opinions on French New Wave films is exactly what I appreciate. The amount of episodes on Deathbed, it's what the minimum of what people need to hear. So completely agree.
Honestly, not enough podcasts talk about Deathbed, the bed that eats. I'll be serious. Like, I was... When Zach picked that to watch, I thought, this guy's just being an asshole. But like, genuinely, it was like weirdly good. If you've never seen Deathbed, Bed to Eats, viewers, watch it. There is a scene where a bed eats Kentucky Fried Chicken. And it is and I say this completely unironically, and I've said this on the podcast multiple times. I'm so unironic when I say that the scene where the bed eats the Kentucky Fried Chicken, that is the peak of cinema, because no other medium can do that. No other medium can show a bed eating chicken. So watch Deathbed, the bed that eats. It's weirdly good.
I love that. We started the conversation about what we would cover, and somehow we ended up in South Korea. There is a companion episode of this on the They Live by Film YouTube channel that we covered Train to Busan. Lovely conversation. Hope you enjoy that one. But on this one, we are talking about the 2006 Bong Joon-Ho film, The Host. First, let's do it the same way that you do it on your channel. Let's dive into some immediate thoughts, because it sounds like you like this one significantly less than me.
Yeah. So, like, I was super excited to watch this movie because this is not my first Bong Joon-ho movie. I've seen two others, like the two famous ones, Parasite and Memories of Murder. Mm-hmm. And, like, both of those films are, like, 10 out of 10 masterpieces.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, Bong's going to make a monster movie. I'm sure it's going to be really good. And it's not bad. I'm just disappointed. There's a few things in this film, like, and I'm not just going to sit here and talk about how bad the CGI is. The CGI is bad. It is what it is. They had a budget. It is what it is when it comes to the CGI. I'm not going to badger the CGI like I know most people would. But this film is just a mess. It's just, if Train to Busan is like a perfectly planned film, this is just like the opposite of that. Like, I was sitting through this, and there was like whole stretches where I'm like, why are we here? Why are we doing this right now? Let's just, and maybe it's just because I got in just expecting a straight monster movie. I expected Korean Godzilla.
Right.
And it's not really Korean Godzilla.
Not at all.
Korean. Yeah. So maybe my expectations were in the wrong place, but for me, I just felt like the film overall is just a big mess, and I would have preferred it focus on one thing rather than try and focus on a few different things that this film does. Either focus on the monster or focus on the political stuff, because they get too muddied when you try and mix them all together.
Yeah, I do understand that aspect. And at the heart of this, I do think that overall this is a socio-political drama thriller more than it is a monster movie, truly. But unfortunately, when you're adding the allegories and metaphors in with the monster, it's hard, because that's such an intimidating piece. That's going to take over the main storylines of what you're going for with the politics side. So I get that. I do want to highlight that this is like oddly factual. There are so many things that happen in this movie that either happened in real life or very close to it that happened. But also a lot of the reactions to things in this film are so realistic. And not only have we seen it through incidences back in the 2000s, but there was so much that watching this now reminded me of the idiotic response to the pandemic, that it struck me so much more this time than the first time I saw it, which was before the pandemic. And just, my goodness, I love this movie. I feel like this is not quite a masterpiece. It's not quite Memories of Murder or Parasite, but it is like barely a step below that for me. I do think that there are many aspects of this that can feel a lot more messy than those two films, but the details in this that seem to be beyond planned out just win me over as I watch this. Our main character, who is an actor that Bong Joon-Ho works with quite often and is great in every single film that he acts in, and he was absolutely wonderful here. Kang Ho Song, or Kang Ho Song, whatever his name is. I'm not good with names, so we'll stay with that. He's wonderful in this, but everybody that I've talked to about this, they laugh because he is just this bumbling idiot. And the way that I look at this is, he is just supposed to be the everyman. He's not supposed to be able to respond to this giant monster taking over the city as a government figure. But unfortunately, they're just as bumbling as he is. So everything starts to fall apart. Yeah. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, and the Song Kang-ho, he's a great actor, and I do actually like him in this. I have no problem with him being that kind of bumbling everyman character. Like you said, he does very human things. If we were put in these scenarios, 99% of people would act like he does. So yeah, I have no problem with that. I'm surprised people do have a problem, with him from what you're saying, for people you've spoken to, because I do think he's phenomenal, and it shows his range. Because if you compare this character with his character from Memories of Murder, couldn't be more different. Opposite ends of spectrum intellectually and in terms of like composure and stuff like that. He's a fantastic actor. More people should, watch Korean films just to see him, because I don't think he's done anything outside Korea. I don't think he's made his way over to Hollywood to do anything. But yeah, he's phenomenal. And I see where you're coming from regarding the pandemic sort of stuff, in terms of how people, look at react to the pandemic. Like, there's that scene where the people are wearing face masks, which, in 2006 wouldn't have meant anything to 99% of people, especially Westerners anyway. Watching it now gives everybody PTSD seeing face masks on film. And there's that scene where they're all sort of standing, people waiting for like a bus or something, and a dude's coughing and he takes off his face mask and spits in the puddle. And then, the bus comes and splashes the puddle and everybody panics. Definitely reminiscent of how people were acting during COVID. It's easy to kind of forget that now, even though COVID's only really kind of gone, within the last year, I guess. And I say gone as in, we've come out of that pandemic phase anyway.
Right.
But I found it funny, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm just I laugh my way through trauma, but I just found that scene funny. And I guess it originally was meant to be funny. It was kind of meant to be played kind of for laughs, really. So, but I suppose these days when we've all been wearing face masks, for a 2-year period, maybe it becomes more traumatizing than funny, but I still found it funny. And the problem I have, again, I don't want to keep harping on about how I think it's messy, because it's a very basic opinion, and I know I'm the bad guy when it comes to this movie. I'll just put it out there. I know that I'm the bad guy. I know that I'm wrong, because I was really excited to watch this movie because of the praise it gets. I think it has like 93 or 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, something stupidly high like that. So I know I'm the bad guy. I'll just put it out there. I will always hold my hands up. If people are here who listen to our podcasts are here watching this, they'll know that I will always put my hands up and say, I know I'm the bad guy. I know that I'm wrong with this. And maybe I need to rewatch it, but it could have been one of those cases where it caught me on a bad day or something. But when I want to watch a monster movie, I want to see monsters, and I want to see people fighting monsters. Right. I don't want to see, there's that whole subplot with the brother, and he's like a like a runaway from quarantine, and he's like, it becomes like a Mission Impossible movie or something, where he's like in that high rise in the office, and you know all the army guys go to get him, and he's like trying to escape. It's like watching like a bumbling Tom Cruise in like a Mission Impossible movie, and it's just so like out of left field. It really like took me out. It was like, what does this matter? You know, what does this matter for the plot of, you know, the main character getting his daughter back from a monster? It's just like we're going places that I don't see, like I don't find necessary. And again, I know I'm the bad guy, so I'll just say this, but we're going places that I just like, I could skip all this and it's not going to really matter, because you know, by the time we get to like the latter sort of act, like the last act of the movie, like none of that even really mattered. They're all kind of back where the film started to try and get the daughter back. So we took like a hour detour just to end up back in the same place. So I don't know. I just feel like this could have been trimmed down to like a 90-minute fun, actiony monster movie. And instead we got 2 hours of like this extra socio-political stuff thrown in that I know. And you mentioned, there's a lot of, and I haven't touched on it yet, and I wanted to circle back to it. You mentioned that a lot of the stuff in this is actually weirdly based on fact. And I did some reading on that, you know, about the whole formaldehyde going down the drains and stuff at the orders of the US. That was true. So what you see at the start of the film actually happened. And the monster was inspired by reports of, you know, these deformed fish in the river, you know, on the back of that. There's obviously the Agent Yellow / Agent Orange stuff that we can kind of touch on as well. So there is a lot of this. It's both smartly written and annoyingly put together, if that's the best way I can put it. Whoever, I don't know, did Bong write this movie or did somebody else write it? I'm not
on
familiar.
This one, I think, he's the main writer on this one.
He's the main writer. Okay. He's a smart dude. We all know he's a smart dude. The dude made Parasite. He made Memories of Murder. He's super smart. And, you know, there's a lot of ideas in this film that are really smart. You know, it's cool to take something from real life and try and morph it into a monster movie. It's like with the original Godzilla, you know, they took this idea of nuclear war creating this monster, whatever. That's cool. He tried to be too smart. He tried to add in too much stuff. That's my opinion. Again, I know I'm wrong, but for me, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he's trying to make a monster movie if he wants to make a social political statement. Make a film about bureaucracy. Why make a monster movie? You know,
well, and the way you said at the beginning might be the explanation here. Is you said you wanted a South Korean Godzilla. This is kind of a South Korean Godzilla, but with a lot less of the monster. It's mostly focusing on the U.S.'s Godzilla aspect. And when you're looking at this, every single scene that has anybody that is a government official, it is there for a reason. That's what they're using to drive the plot. So when the brother is escaping and it's Mission Impossible style, all these resources are poured into law enforcement and poured into chasing down something that's not really the task at hand. So in a way, it makes sense because it's commentary on life in South Korea at that moment. So I get that it's meandering from the film and it's not what you wanted. I enjoy that commentary aspect of it. But the biggest thing, you know, the fact that somebody in real life, the U.S. military ordered somebody to put formaldehyde in their river. And not only then is the U.S. government and military like the bad guys of this obvious situation, but to find out that South Korea was in on it and both governments worked together to do a lot of nasty shit to people. Like this ended up being a very classist, elitist, very bureaucratic, like you said earlier, just dive into how people are not seen as people. And as we see the monster here go in through the different sectors of, just coming up on the banks of this river and the way people react to it, there's like no government response. And that is exactly how a lot of people felt about COVID for the longest time. So watching it this time, God dang, that sucked. It hurt. I mean, just contemplating on the fact that we lost more than 1 million lives in this world because so few people responded appropriately. And watching this, it's not the same, obviously, but it's done in a way that it's very contemplative about that. So,
and what you say makes perfect sense, Ryan. I think what's happened here is this is the dangers of coming into a film with misset expectations.
Yep.
It can really damage your perception of something, and I'm always happy to hold my hands up when that happens. Like, I remember when Twin Peaks: The Return came out, and I'm like the biggest Twin Peaks fan in the whole wide world. I love that show to absolute pieces, and I hated The Return so much. I hated every moment of it because all I wanted was to see Dale Cooper sitting down in a diner eating pie and drinking coffee. That's all I wanted in the whole wide world, was for that to happen. And I hated it. I really hated it. But then I rewatched it and my expectations were reset and I loved it. So this is, and this, we can talk about, other examples of this happening, with you or with me or whatever, but it's a very real thing. When you go into something expecting one thing and it doesn't happen, it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. The majority of the time, especially in my case anyway, if I go into something, I'll talk about, I'll give another example. Have you seen James Whale's The Old Dark House?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I hated that movie as well because I went into it expecting like a gothic horror when really it's the birth of camp horror.
Yep.
So when I sort of did some reading about it and I rewatched it, I'm like, well, this is great. This is like, I should not have hated this movie because now I have the context for it. So I suppose ultimately what I'm trying to say is I feel like if I was to rewatch The Host, which I would not be adverse to doing, I'm not someone who is going to sit there and, be grumpy and say, no, this film's, bad. I'm never going to watch this again, whatever. I am open to my interpretations changing, once I've learned new things, which I've learned now from talking to you. So, The Host is a film that I feel like I probably should revisit now that I have better expectations for what I'm getting into, that I should not sit down and expect a straight monster caper. Which, to be fair, because the film is written by Bong, I should not have expected something as basic as that. So I really only have myself to blame. But I feel like I could just rewatch this movie now. I'm actually interested to rewatch it with those eyes because I want to see what the hype is. I want to enjoy it as much as other people do. I'm not going to say things are bad just to be a contrarian. I very much want to be in the status quo. Please let me in.
Well, and I've done this as well with a lot of films, especially kind of similar to what you brought up just now with The Old Dark House. A lot of the foundational horror films for a lot of people, I never got to see because they weren't super mainstream. And I'm not even talking about major deep cuts, stuff like Chopping Mall. Most people have seen Chopping Mall. It was not a film that ever came across my childhood. So the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm ready for like this big horror movie that everybody loves and it's scary. I watch it and it's the cheesiest piece of junk I've ever seen. And I'm like, why is this so beloved? Now, I've got respect for it. I've seen it a few times and I understand the place that it's coming from. It was not what I wanted that first time. I've done that with Street Trash. I've done that with a handful of other films that are genuine, foundational, like everybody saw these in the 80s and 90s video store days, and I just missed out on that era. And because of that, I expected something very different. So I completely get that.
Yeah.
For anybody watching, if you want something similar that I kind of felt the same way about, but maybe a little more in the center of rather than post-pandemic, have you seen The Sadness from last year?
The Sadness? No, never even heard of it.
This is a Taiwanese film that a lot of people view as one of those like gory for gory's sake type movies. It's just there to shock you. It is a virus film. The entire thing is all about a virus, and it starts with some of the most blatantly obvious, not even tongue-in-cheek commentary on the way that the government's handled the pandemic. And it is a marvelously fun movie to watch. I think that combining the two films that we watched for this, you kind of get The Sadness. If you take some of the political satire from The Host, you take the gore and intensity from Train to Busan, and you get The Sadness. It's nice. A little more over the top. I mean, they show a zombie skull fucking a woman, but
Jesus.
It is a really good movie still. It is definitely worth watching. It is I would say a much worse movie than these two movies, but it's sort of a really good like compilation of the two.
Okay. bad horror movie. Zach has definitely seen this, I would say.
I would imagine so.
If it's a bad horror movie, especially a recent bad horror movie, that seems like right up his alley. So I'm gonna have a look and see what he rated it after this, and I'm gonna ask him about it as well to see if he has seen it.
Yeah, Taiwanese, and we don't get a lot of stuff out of Taiwan, so it's nice to see some representation there, and it got pretty big last year.
Yeah, I don't know much modern Taiwanese films. Obviously, they had that boom in like the 80s and the 90s, Taiwanese new wave stuff. But I can't say that I've seen anything modern. Like the most modern thing I've seen from Taiwan would be like A Brighter Summer Day, which was like the 90s. So yeah, I can't say I've seen or heard of anything outside of coming out of Taiwan. So I'll have to look into it to see if it's like streaming anywhere or something. That's the problem with being in my region. My options are dramatically lower for streaming than you guys over in the States. So
well, I know it got a German disc release, and it was streaming here on Shudder, I believe. It also got a Canadian disc release through Raven Banner, and now that I think about it, it may have come out through RLJE because of Shudder in the States as well.
Well, you can just like disregard everything I just said because I've just checked on Letterboxd and it's on Shudder, so I just need to shut up. Stop pretending that I don't get nice things because it's on Shudder in Ireland. So I have no excuse to not watch it because I have Shudder.
Man, these are two really great films in my opinion. Are you happy that you watched both? Is there one that you're disappointed in?
Well, I suppose we've talked about it. Like, I'm super happy that I finally watched Train to Busan. Over on the other video on the They Live by Film channel, I go into a little bit my story behind Train to Busan and my my super rare DVD that somebody can buy if they want. But like, I wouldn't say I regret like watching The Host. I definitely don't regret it. It's not a bad film, as I said. It's definitely not a bad movie. It's just one that I just had so much trouble connecting with, and sort of having that connection with the same way that I did with Train to Busan. But obviously, after speaking to you about this for the last, however long, I'm definitely open to rewatching it with kind of like a new set of eyes. I suppose, like, while we're on your YouTube channel, it'd be weird if we didn't talk about physical media. So I might as well show off how I watched this. So in Region B, I want to say it's probably about 2.5, maybe even 3 years ago. There is a company there called Curzon. To kind of put it into American terms, Curzon is kind of like the British Janus Films. They get their hands on a lot of art house stuff that they distribute through affiliated theaters, but then they also have a physical media wing called Artificial Eye, but they don't seem to be branding stuff with anymore. So I think they've kind of moved away. And there's probably a reason for that, because you have guys like me who on our podcast will say that Artificial Eye is garbage. Yep. So I have this beautiful set that they put out because I'm a sucker and I still bought things from them, even though I talk about how much I hate them. But this is a beautiful set in terms of like how it looks, like really nice thick cardboard. This comes out and like everything folds out really nice kind of individually. So really beautiful put together set. Practically no special features, which is what Curzon is known for. It's not 4K or anything. It's just Blu-ray. Again, I don't think they do. Well, they've started doing 4Ks, right? Your Correct. 3 colors one, is that 4K?
It is, and then they did the Veronique films in 4K.
Yeah, they have a Wim Wenders set that they brought out. Some of those are in 4K. I have the 4K steelbook for Wings of Desire on the shelf there somewhere. But like the main reason I hate Curzon and Artificial Eye, I suppose I should specify that branch. That there's one main reason, and I'm not going to use the Bong set as an example for this because it doesn't represent it well. But so this is Cold War by Pawlikowski. Great film. Don't know if you've seen it, but recommend it. It's really good. But you'll notice the spine is upside down. And that pisses me off so much. I can live without special features, but that spine being upside down annoys me to no end. So ever since I bought my first Artificial Eye DVD, which I remember distinctly was Winter's Bone with Jennifer Lawrence. So I would have bought that like 10 years ago, maybe even more.
Right.
And I put it on my little DVD shelf where I started collecting movies. You know, I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid. I'm like, I'm going to start collecting movies. And I really want to see this film with Jennifer Lawrence getting lots of Oscar buzz, Winter's Bone. Oh, great. Here's a copy. Let me put it on my shelf. Why is it upside down?
Right.
So I've hated Curzon for 10 years and I will never stop, even if they start doing good products. But the Bong set is nice. And even though I don't own the 3-color set that I see there on your shelf, it looks really nice. And the Vim Vendor set looks really nice. So maybe I should give them another chance now that they've gotten rid of the artificial eye branding. Maybe they've just moved completely. We've never talked to them on the podcast. I don't know if you've ever talked to anyone from Curzon yourself. Maybe they've just kind of done a lot of changes internally for, you know, based on feedback over the years. So fingers crossed things get better for them in the future, because it's going to take a lot to turn around 10 years of hatred.
Right. And possibly they've just maybe been dealing with more prestige items or important films, and they realize if they screw it up, it would be kind of hell to pay situation.
Well, this is the thing. That's not the case. Like, they have been the primary company for distributing art house films in Region B. Like, you know, we've had more in the last like 5 years. You know, Criterion launched their UK, their Region B branch. Arrow, you know, Academy was around for a while, and obviously Fran left and started Radiance Films. They're doing that. Eureka obviously came up a good few years ago as well, where they were more about doing classic stuff. But like pretty much any big art house film that was coming out, like Artificial Eye, Curzon, they were the ones getting it. You know, they were the ones who originally held the rights for 3-colors when it first came out on DVD years ago. You know, they put out Sit and Tango originally, again, like in like the early 2000s. They've had box sets for all the big directors. You know, my biggest pet peeve was that for a long time, they were the only way to watch Tarkovsky movies, and their prints for the Tarkovsky movies were awful, especially Solaris. Their Solaris print is just terrible.
Right.
So for the longest time, you know, they were, and, you know, they still have a lot of rights. They are still a big heavy hitter. Like I said, they are comparable to Janus, you know, in the UK. They put out all the theatrical stuff for all the big art house movies. They have like the monopoly on the theater stuff. Mubi are trying to kind of get in on that ground now with the newer films. So Mubi are kind of like their main competitor now, but Curzon are still a powerhouse, and it's going to take a long time to get them off their perch unless they get their act together, which hopefully, looking at their last few releases, like, you know, we've mentioned, if it seems as though they're getting their act together, which, you know, that's good for everybody. That's good for us as consumers, you know. Whatever, you know, I can make Artificial Eye jokes all I want about how bad they've been for the last 10 years. If they get their act together now, then great. I'll start buying their products again. I say again, I bought their Wings of Desire 4K when it came out, you know, at the end of last year. So it's not like I've stopped buying from them either. So I'm part of the problem, I guess.
But that's the difference. I think that Steelbook had plenty of special features. The Vim Vendor set has all kinds of special features.
Yeah, looks great.
The 3-color set, it is way better than the Criterion. I think there's like 10 short films in here, and I don't think any of them are on the Criterion set. So it is a much, much better type of release. So hopefully it's just a massive improvement from what it used to be.
Fingers crossed anyway. That's, you know, at the end of the day, we're consumers. So it's a win for us at the end. You know, it's only good news if they improve.
Right. Well, Adam, this has been a whole lot of fun to discuss both of these. I hope people watching will go watch the companion episode over on the They Live by Film channel. The entire podcast will be up on both of our podcasts. And other than that, I mean, now we got to do this again. We got to get you on as many times as Zach and Chris have been on. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll try and come up with some other films, or maybe do something a little bit different. But yeah, definitely would love to come on again, Ryan. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon. Awesome. Take it easy, man. Thank you for watching The Disconnected. On the way out, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you've liked the video, and that you've copied the link to be able to share with someone else that may appreciate this.